Today we would be talking about Andha Yug in the light of various reviews, various opinions, and various themes. Themes could be talked at length, but today I would be talking about reviews, opinions, and themes as they are overlapping each other. And when we talk of Andha Yug, I would begin with the first theme or the first review that has come, that is of self enchantment. This play is about self enchantment. Every character, most of the characters who have played direct or some indirect role for the catastrophe of all the characters, or for the end which most of the characters met, is this particular feeling, or this particular vice, that is of self enchantment. I think this particular vice is responsible for the catastrophe that falls upon all at the end of the play. Now, when we talk of self enchantment, we should begin with Dhritarashtra, because he's so much enchanted with himself, with his ambition, and with his self righteousness, that he should have been the king and not Pandu, and he deserved to be the king. This self righteousness, or this self enchantment, or this ambition of himself, this leads to everything. And he's not only blind as a king, he's blind as a father also. He fails to identify that Duryodhan is all evil. Duryodhan is a Satan, but he just as he wanted the crown or the throne for himself, he later on wants the same throne for Duryodhan. And this self enchantment is extended, somewhere extended for all his sons, Duryodhan, then Dushasan, then all his sons who are there. So self enchantment for Dhritarashtra, and then is the of self enchantment of Dhritarashtra is the major cause of the perils which everyone meets at the end. All the characters are suffering with self love and obsession of one or the other kind. Then in the list of characters, I would talk of Draupadi. Draupadi is somewhere obsessed of her upbringing. She is somewhere obsessed of her clan. She is obsessed of her own own clan of being belonging to Kshatriya origin. She's again very proud. She's arrogant. She's so much aware of her beauty that she knows there would be a parade of prince who would come to win her. And the first seed of the result of her arrogance is her humiliation of Karna at the Swayamvar. There she's not only humiliating Karna for his origin, for his birth. At the same point of time, she is reflecting her own character. She is reflecting her own pride. She is reflecting her own arrogance of being very beautiful, of belonging to a royal clan. So somewhere she is also responsible for whatever has happened in Mahabharat, and this is her self enchantment. And then, of course, one cannot leave Duryodhan. Duryodhan is so much proud. He's proud of his warriorship, his ability of fighting great wars, winning great wars, his statesmanship, and his lust for power, his lust for women. This is all this. is nothing but somewhere his own conception of thinking that he is always right. Then we have to somewhere talk of Gandhari as well. She is not self-enchanted, but somewhere she is enchanted with her own oaths. She is enchanted with whatever what she thought is right in life. She not only covers her own eyes, she is covering, she's looking from the eyes of Dhritarashtra or Duryodhan most of the times. So, and Dhritarashtra is a blind person. He is blind in all aspects, intellectually, emotionally, blind as a ruler. She's looking at the world from the eyes of Dhritarashtra. So somewhere she has closed her own eyes. Dhritarashtra is himself blind, looking from the eyes of a blind person. She's twice removed from reality. And then her series of curses at the end, that is also somewhere she thinks herself very powerful. She thinks that she's capable of cursing. She's not realizing that this is the time where she should not be cursing people. She should be somewhere reconciling two things, and she would try to put things back, put all the scattered pieces back into one, but she does not do it. She even after destruction, she is ready to destroy anything which has been left. So she is also a character who is self-enchanted. Then we have to talk about Bhishma. Bhishma is enchanted with Hastinapur and the concept of Hastinapur and the concept of the crown, or his sincerity towards the crown, or his sincerity towards the army of Hastinapur, or his sincerity towards Dhritarashtra and Duryodhan, the prince of Hastinapur. So somewhere he is also obsessed with his own oaths, and he fails to make a balance between what is right and wrong. Hastinapur, if Hastinapur has turned out into an evil force, evil power, then he should have taken a right decision. He should have taken the side of people who were comparatively more correct, or who were comparatively right. But he fails to do it. Then another review which comes, or opinion which comes, is about crisis. There is overlapping emotions. There are emotions which are contradictory to each other, like morality. They are talking about morality. Krishna is talking about morality. Then Yudhishthir is talking about morality. Then Vidur is talking about morality. Even Bhishma is talking about morality. And still there is so much of cruelty involved. Atrocities are there. And then at the peak of atrocities, there are surrenders. There is a mixture of benevolence and selfishness. Most of the characters are selfish, but they are at some point of time, or to a certain extent of time, benevolent too. Then there is no spirit. There is lack of dharma everywhere. And then there are huge soliloquies where one is talking about dharma. There are dialogues on dharma. Then there are dialogues on redemptions and revenge. The revenges which are there in the play. They have their bringing to the other lives or the past lives. Then one is talking of family, like Dhritarashtra is always talking about his family. And then there is a society which should have been talked about, which should have been taken care of, but nobody is taking care of society. Then people are talking about logic of movement, that they are taking actions just for the logic of movement. They are not bothered about greater good, or what would happen to the world at large, or what would happen to the society at large. They are involving themselves in the decisions of the moment. So there is they lack in wider perspective. They lack in thinking for the good of the whole of the society. So when we talk of logic of the moment, we would note that all the characters are somewhere, they find themselves between between the roles which are moral roles, or roles which are purely based on materialistic pursuits, or purely based on just collecting some wealth, or collecting kingdoms after kingdoms, or extending the boundaries of their kingdoms. Because when we see Bhishma in the beginning, Bhishma is extending the kingdom of his own father, and he is invading one kingdom after another. He is not only invading one kingdom after the another, he is also invading the daughters of that kingdom. And when we talk of, we started with the point redemption and revenge. So when we talk of revenge, it was the seeds of revenge, or Shikhandi's revenge for Bhishma, that could be seen long back, that had its origin or seed in the past life. So somewhere we see that most of the characters, they could not balance these aspects, and they are behaving at the logic of the moment. They are taking actions at the logic of the moment, without thinking or without rethinking, or even giving a thought for what would happen, or what would happen to the entire society, or there would be a complete bloodshed or massacre. So what would happen? Nobody, when somebody is taking an action, whether Draupadi is saying something, or whether Arjun is saying something or doing something, and even other characters who are themselves villainous, like Duryodhan or Karn, they do not realize what they are doing. When Kunti asks Karn for for giving her this sense of relief that he would not kill his sons, she fails to realize that this is the point where she could do justice to Karna, and she should be neutral at this point, as all of his sons are his own sons. But she works for the logic of the moment, and she almost loots Karna out of everything which he possessed. Then I've been saying there is a rejection of collective voice of wisdom. Even in the end, the people who survived, like Gandhari or Ashwatthama, they fail to work for the collective wisdom, and collective wisdom was absent even before the war and even after the war. If there had been a collective wisdom, there would not have been a war at all. But people who could give wisdom, they did not give wisdom, and the people who did not have any wisdom, they had to act in beastly manner. Then Dharamveer Bharti, who is the original writer, and we have got only the translation, he had a dreadful experience of war of the first world, the war of partition, independence of India. There was a lot of bloodshed. Then there is Second World War. Then there is this a Cold War. All these things had been witnessed by Dr. Dharamveer Bharti. Then he has a disgusting feeling about the world wars. He has disgusting feeling about a lot of bloodshed during the partition of India. And then he knew the whole world is suffering from Cold War. So all these feelings, the outcomes of war, or the cycle of revenge, or not following the path of redemption, or mindless of all fellow human beings, or disintegration of society, or all these things are very much reflected in the play. Then some people feel that the play is about Andhayuk and its translation is blind age. It is blind age as well as blind kingdom. The kingdom, the king who is not only a ruler, he is also somewhere a father figure of the society, somewhere a father figure of the entire kingdom. He fails to realize that he is meant for the society or the kingdom at large. He becomes a ruler or a father. He becomes a father and leaves the role of ruler. Then Andhayuk is somewhere people feel that it is not about truth. It is about half truth. It is about semi truths, or pseudo truths, because everyone has his own argument, and all these arguments could be re-argued, or could be met with counter arguments. So the characters and their arguments, they can be challenged, the way they behaved, or uh, whatever logic they had in their mind, or whatever faith they had in their mind, that could also be challenged. Then so it is all about ardh satya. It is not every character or every situation is not full of truth. That could also be challenged. Then of course, this is the destruction of the victor and the vanquished. Even the victors, which I have already said, the Pandavas came out to be victorious, but they were victorious, but at the same point of time they vanquished with the people who were defeated. So it is a story of God who breathes and dies, each creature, but above all, becoming and being of a warrior, and how situation and choices makes us choices they make us what we are. Then there is if we say that it is a play about darkness, then I think somewhere we would be wrong also, because this play gives a message that war is not a right thing. War is the option which should be avoided at every cost. At every cost, it raises a question whether Mahabharat was fought to establish dharma. Are the Pandavas really victorious? Or has dharma been followed by every character? Or then of course it tells you that, or it somewhere warns you that it is all darkness in the end if we go, if we take the path of war. Just as if there is a nuclear war, it would result in a holocaust, destroying both the victor and the vanquished. So this is the story of light through the medium of darkness, through the medium of blind. Thank you.